Okay, so this is a tutorial on how to create a photo album for your website. Now this is a very simple concept. The code is slightly complicated, so I'm going to have to explain that well. I'm just going to take the first part of this tutorial, talking you through the features of this photo album script, and also I'm going to take you through the code first of all so you can see it before we start writing it. The worst thing to do is to be like, what's that line, you know, what's coming up next. You don't know what to expect from a tutorial when it's written start to finish always. So we're going to go through the code and have a brief look at what each part does. I'm also going to give you a quick demo of it, which I'm going to do now. So you can see we've got our front interface here. This is actually embedded in an original page that I've created called index.php. So this is my HTML file, and I've embedded using PHP the album.php file. Now this album.php file here can be embedded in any page anywhere you want. Then it can be customized here, so how many columns to show of images, so how many images, say you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, and then it will go down to the next line. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute if you don't know what I'm talking about. But you can embed this album.php anywhere and it will work from any page. There's absolutely no PHP code in here whatsoever except the include, and that's all we're doing. And as you'll see in a minute from this demo, it is fully functional inside our index.php file. Okay, so what we've got here is two albums which I've created. Now these are all created in directories. So if we come to our data folder, I'll just come back to the main. These are our three files. We've got our lightbox.js, as we're going to be using LightBox to display our photos. We've got a folder called data, and we've got albums here. Two albums that I've already set up with photos inside. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 pictures in here, and we've got 2 pictures in here. Now this is the thumbnail picture folder, where we're going to keep the thumbnails, which are smaller versions of our images. Now you'll have to create these manually. I've created them at dimensions of 120 by 160, and my photos in here are 455 by 341. I just reduced them in Paint by a percentage of 7, I think they were, because they were quite large photos. Anyway, the point of this script is that you can create any new album in here you want. You can move any pictures to any album here. Obviously leave the thumbnails folder alone. Just obviously add one instance of every picture you'll keep in any album. So you've only got one thumbnails folder, so it's easy. If I wanted to add a new picture in here, or add 3 new pictures in here, I would add the 3 thumbnails with exactly the same name to here. And if I wanted to add 2 more in here, I would add the 2 thumbnails into here with exactly the same name. So you can basically, they are interchangeable. You can put your thumbnails in here and change around your album photos, and this thumbs won't be affected as long as you have an instance in here of it as a thumb. Whatever albums it in, even if you create a new album, it will still allow you to display it. Okay, so we've got album 1 and album 2. Let's have a look at this. Let's refresh. Right, so if I click on album 1, you can see that we've got a few things. The title, first of all. We've got 2 pictures, which I showed you earlier are these 2. And then when we click on them, we get a LightBox image pop up that just lets us view the image. Now I've dumbed this down. It's not very pretty. This screen altogether is quite small for the sake of recording for YouTube, but basically if I can click that and just click it off. So that's without going onto any different page. It works within the same page, and you can click and click off. And we've got a back to albums link here. Bearing in mind this is all inside the index.php file. So like I said, it's very you can integrate it into any part of your website. Album 2, you can see that we've got the images along here, and we're down to the next line. Now I've chosen 5 columns. Now like I said earlier, it's customizable. Again, by the way, I was just wanted to show you the lightbox effect. Yeah, so the lightbox blah blah blah, it pops up. If I was to come into the code, and change the column to 3. Say you had a slightly narrower page than I'm working with now. You can see this grey border or grey background for this table here. If you had a slightly narrower table or a slightly narrower area that you wanted to put them in, if I refresh this now, you can see that we're now working in a column of 3, and again we can put this down to 2. And even if you're working with a tool sort of skyscraper effect area down the side of a page, you can then use a 1 column thing, and it still works the same. So it's very customizable in that way. I'm just going to change this back to 5 quickly. Okay, so yes, creating an album. Creating an album is as simple as basically creating a new folder. Now at the moment I'm working in Windows, but you would be working inside maybe cPanel if you're using cPanel, or FTP. So it's just as easy to create albums and add or swap pictures around. Now I'm going to create an album called Album 3, keep with the consistency, and I'm going to say I want this picture of these, I don't know what they are, daisies, that's it. I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to paste it into Album 3. Now this is the full size image. It's gone from Album 2 now, and the thumbnail is here anyway, with the same name. So we've still got the thumbnail, we haven't had to do anything with the thumbnail, we only have one instance of the thumbnail. Now if I come back into my photo album and refresh, you can see that coming into Album 2 it's gone, and Album 3 it has appeared. So it's very easy to add albums, delete albums, move pictures around to different albums, and obviously give your albums a name. Okay, so that's basically how it works. I'm going to come into the code now. Like I said, I've got my index.php. This can be any page that you already have. All you really need to work on is album.php and creating this code. And like I said, it looks complicated, but once we create it piece by piece and put it all together, you'll realize that each individual part of it is actually quite simple. Okay, so we're using LightBox, so this is the standard LightBox include for the script, the JavaScript script, and we are taking things from the start and creating our variables, settings, directories that we want to use, so what the base directory is called, what the thumbnail directory is called, and this is the album get. You'll notice that we're using the get variable inside HTML. When I click on an album, you can see that up here we've got the album name displayed. Obviously this %20 would be a space. Now as a security issue, just going back to the demonstration, if I was to do ... for example, go back directory, album doesn't exist. Now without the check, let me just show you, without the check here, it would be possible to go and view files in a directory back. So be able to view these files, then these files, which are all my tutorial collections, blah blah blah. So it's pretty dangerous in the respect that we're doing directory viewing of different folders. So you do need checks there to check things like for dots, forward slashes, and then we've got a backslash here. The reason it's a double backslash is a backslash in PHP allows you to use characters that you wouldn't usually be able to inside your code itself. More on that later when I obviously do the tutorial. So yeah, we've got a few checks here, so we're checking with additional security checks. Let's start back from the top. We've got our select album. Basically all we're doing here, the code that looks this complicated, is opening the directory, and this is our base directory, so the directory here, which is called data. It's selecting all our albums except thumbs, and it's displaying the names of our albums, which is here. So we're echoing out the name of our albums with a link to our page. Now page is the current page that we're on, because we're embedding inside another page. We can't use album.php, or it's going to go straight back to album.php. Obviously you can run album.php on its own. There you go. So we select an album, we can click it, everything still works. So yeah, oh, there's a picture of me. So yeah, we can still select everything we want and it works. But because we're embedding it inside index.php, we need PHP to recognize this as the current page that we are working on, and therefore every link will be index.php related. So hopefully that makes sense. Otherwise, hopefully later on you understand. Yeah, so we're echoing out our album names from the directories inside our data folder, and then we're checking if the album exists, and then we're doing our additional security checks. If not, we're telling it doesn't exist. So we've got the sort of human element there where we're telling them, we're not just returning an error, we're telling them that it doesn't exist. Then what we're doing is now this x part here might look complicated, like, oh, what's this, x++, x equals 0, what's that for? The reason I called it x is just to keep it simple and out the way. But basically what this is it's checking here if x equals column, which is the column count up here in the settings, so here, and that's just creating a break when it hits the specified column limit. So when this hits 4, x will return to 0, we'll create a break and we'll start counting again. So if you had, say, 8 images, or 9 images rather, you would have 2 rows of 4 pictures, and then you would have 1 row of 1 picture, if that makes sense. Closing the directory, just standard file directory procedures. We've got our table here which we're displaying inline. This is to keep the images, let me just show you. This is just to keep the images here with these gaps in between, keep them looking neat. Otherwise we're just going to be displaying images willy-nilly. You can see here we've got gaps in between, and then when we come down to a new line, let me just show you. When we come down to a new line, we've still got the same nice amount of gaps in between, which just keeps everything looking neat. Now by all means you can use any type of formatting you want for the design. CSS would be a nice option, just your preference really, but like I've explained thousands of times, this is a PHP tutorial, so I am using scruffy design, I am using tables, but at the end of the day, if you want to learn about divs, CSS, anything else, go elsewhere and learn that. I'm just focusing on the PHP, so excuse the scruffy design methods. Okay, so yeah, what we're doing is we've got a link to the actual file, and this is using the rel equals LightBox, and this will allow it to be opened in a LightBox. Now obviously this is important, otherwise we're just going to open the image as we usually would in a browser, which we don't want. And the image source comes from the thumbnails, so you can see we're using the same file name as we're opening the actual large image with. So large image here, small image here. We've got height and width restrictions on the thumbnail. These can obviously be changed. You can even take these out and do like a height thing there and put them at the top if you wanted, but obviously it's up to you to customize and create your own. And so that's the end of our table. And that's pretty much it, and we've just got a back to albums link. So that's the script explained, that's the code explained. In the second part, or the first part of the tutorial rather, it'll be, then we're going to go through and actually create the code from start to finish, so you can follow that as well. Yeah, so just try and write down the code, analyze it, make sure you understand what each part does before you continue with the code. Copying code is never a good idea. So yeah, if you jump on to the next part of the tutorial, I'll do a start to finish write up of this code.